Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a really fascinating journey. Um, Maybe a bit conceptual, but I promise, some pretty profound insights ahead.
Hmm.
Our mission isn't really comparing people or places head to head. Instead, we're going to explore this imagined dialogue between the memories of belonging,
Right.
stretching across two vastly different locations, Governor's Island, right here in New York City, and then Guangzhou in China.
It sounds like a huge leap, maybe.
It does, but I think you'll be surprised by the connections we uncover.
And the great thing about this deep dive is the framework we're using. It's quite specific. We're going to explore these places through four lenses.
Okay.
First, water and the ocean. Then, origin, looking at indigenous roots. After that, colonial influences. And finally, just the constant force of change.
Got it.
And this approach, it lets us get beyond just, geography or economics.
Right, beyond the surface stuff.
Exactly. We're digging into how the very idea of place shapes who we are, how it influences our connections, our sense of being rooted, or sometimes feeling unrooted. That makes sense. These themes, they work like shared reference points. They help us talk about that really human experience of belonging, even when we're looking across huge cultural divides.
Absolutely. So, you listening, think of this as your guide maybe. Our mission is to map out this framework. We'll explore how each theme adds like a crucial layer to understanding these memories of belonging
In both spots.
in both Governor's Island and Guangzhou, yeah. And maybe as we go, you can even start applying these ideas to, your own surroundings.
That's the hope.
But first, let's just quickly set the scene. Our two main subjects. Governor's Island, it's this distinct island, New York Harbor, physically separate, but totally woven into NYC's story.
Undeniably.
It's got this specific history, former military base, very defined narrative.
And then halfway across the world, Guangzhou, not an island,
Nope.
an ancient port city in China, constantly evolving, history going back millennia.
Wow.
But what's really compelling, I think, is that both of them, despite being so different geographically, culturally, they've both been major global hubs.
That's true.
Which makes them perfect canvases, really, for exploring something as complex and frankly universal as belonging.
Yeah.
It's never just one simple thing, is it? It's dynamic. It's layered with history, culture, personal stories. And that fundamental human thing, that need to find roots, feel part of something bigger.
I think that's a really critical point, how universal belonging is. So as we get into these themes, I really encourage you, our listener, just pause sometimes and think about your own experiences. What gives you that deep feeling of belonging somewhere? Is it the history, the people, the actual landscape? Just, keep that question simmering.
Good prompt.
All right, let's kick things off. First theme, first lens, water and the ocean. This feels, I don't know, incredibly fundamental for both places, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just fundamental. It's identity shaping.
Ah.
Completely.
Right.
For Governor's Island, its whole existence is defined by water. That watery isolation wasn't just like a geographical fact, it was strategic. For centuries, it was a military base guarding the harbor. Its purpose was tied to controlling the water. Even today, you have to take a ferry. That reinforces its separateness, creates this specific, almost intentional feeling of being apart.
Yeah, you feel it when you go there.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with New York City itself,
Right.
also defined by water, obviously the Hudson East River, the Atlantic. But here, water is the ultimate connector.
An opposite, really.
Totally. It's the facilitator of its global identity. It's been the gateway for trade, for huge waves of immigration, for the flow of ideas. It's fascinating, isn't it, how water creates strategic isolation for the island while being the engine of just boundless connection for the city right next to it.
That's such a sharp distinction. Isolation versus connection, all down to the water.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we turn to Guangzhou. Again, water is central, but it feels different. More ancient somehow.
Yeah, an entirely different kind of rootedness. You're talking about the Pearl River. It's been this vital trading port for millennia.
Millennia. Wow.
Think about the Maritime Silk Road. Guangzhou wasn't just like a stop along the way. It was a crucial hub,
Right at the center.
connecting China to the rest of the world by sea, building this incredible global network way back when. And that riverine culture, you can still feel it today. The bustling waterfront, it's like a living reflection of that ancient maritime legacy.
So the scale of time is just massive for Guangzhou's connection to water.
It's astounding. So for Governor's Island, water meant defense, separation. For NYC, global exchange, new arrivals. But for Guangzhou, the Pearl River, that meant continuous, deep-seated connection to global trade for thousands of years.
That really defines its character then.
It absolutely does. It makes you picture this huge watery web linking these places, but spinning out totally different stories of belonging, some practical, some almost, sacred.
And speaking of that feeling, we actually have this fascinating personal account. Really brings the idea of water to life for Guangzhou.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, one narrator shared experiences growing up where swimming wasn't just like fun, it was fundamental. They talked about family and friends just routinely heading to the sea or rivers, said it was remarkably convenient.
Wow.
And they grew genuinely fond of just immersing themselves in water, feeling enveloped, supported. They used the phrase reminiscent of the feeling within my mother's womb.
That's powerful imagery.
Isn't it? And then as they got older, visiting offshore islands became this new, profound thing. Standing alone on these little islets, looking out at the huge Pacific Ocean, they felt this deep sense of, like, their own insignificance in nature, but also release, mixed with sometimes a bit of fear.
I can imagine.
And for them, quote, rivers felt much like roads, just vessels of all sizes flowing from rivers to the sea, getting bigger and bigger until these massive cargo ships just vanished over the horizon.
That womb-like feeling, being enveloped by water, it just paints such a vivid picture of belonging, rooted in something sensory, almost primal.
Yeah.
And it makes you think how profoundly different that emotional texture of belonging is compared to the more sort of strategic, functional relationship with water that defined Governor's Island's military past.
That's a great point.
It's not just what water does, but how it makes you feel connected or disconnected that really changes the sense of belonging for people and whole communities.
Okay, so water shapes identity, economy, even personal feelings.
Yeah.
But what about the very first people, the original inhabitants? That brings us to our next theme, origin.
Exactly. Digging down to those foundational layers.
Who was there first? What are their stories?
Right. For New York and Governor's Island, that means talking about the Lenape people. They were the original stewards of Mannahatta, the surrounding islands, including what we call Governor's Island now. Their connection to the place, especially the waterways, was incredibly deep. Millennia before any Europeans showed up.
And that history.
Well, sadly, it's often been obscured, pushed aside in the main stories we tell. But understanding their presence, their relationship to the land and water, it's absolutely crucial. It's that first layer of belonging here.
Right.
And there's a really vital effort happening now to bring their history and their continuing presence forward.
So a story of rediscovery, maybe, recentering those indigenous narratives. How does that compare to Guangzhou?
Very different picture in Guangzhou. It has this incredibly long, continuous history of settlement, goes way back to ancient Yu peoples.
Okay.
And that was followed by millennia of development through one Chinese dynasty after another, each kind of building on the last.
So not the same sense of displacement.
Not in the same way as the Lenape experience, no. It's more like an unbroken lineage, a continuous evolution from these really ancient roots. The sense of origin there feels less like something being rediscovered and more like this deep, continuous thread running right through the city's identity. Which raises a really important question, doesn't it? How do we respectfully weave those earliest histories into how we understand a place today? Whether it's a story of rediscovery or one of unbroken continuity.
Yeah, that's tricky. And this idea of origin, it can also play out on a really personal level, too.
For sure.
For Guangzhou, we heard from someone who calls themselves a third-generation immigrant.
Okay.
Their grandparents brought their father from their rural hometown, Enping, to Guangzhou. They were fleeing famine, looking for survival in the city.
Right. A common story.
And the narrator says, Enping is still on their birth certificate, but it feels utterly foreign. Guangzhou is their true home.
Belonging shifted.
Completely. And this personal origin story, it's also marked by language shifts. Grandparents spoke the local dialect, father largely stopped, and the narrator understands it but struggles to speak it.
Wow.
It just shows how these personal origin stories, shaped by migration, circumstance, they interact with that bigger, ancient story of a city, and how belonging really can shift across just a couple of generations.
That narrative illustrates beautifully how layered origin can be.
Yeah.
It's not just about the first people, but also those personal journeys that redefine home, and how something as basic as language can mark that shift in belonging. Which brings us neatly to our next point, a period that often drastically disrupts those origin stories. Colonial influence.
Ah, yes. This lens looks at how outside powers came in, took control, and reshaped identities, Often a difficult layer, this one.
Very often. For New York City and Governor's Island, the colonial history is pretty direct, right?
Yeah, the Dutch, then the British. New Amsterdam becomes New York.
Exactly. And Governor's Island, with those big fortifications like Fort Columbus, Castle Williams, it embodies that directly.
You could still see them.
Yeah, they're physical symbols of colonial military power, asserting control over the harbor, the territory,
Oh.
a really stark physical sign of an external force taking over.
So that fundamentally changed the landscape, who was in charge.
Everything. Governance, who held power, and therefore who belonged under this new system. Now, in Guangzhou, the experience was different.
How so?
It wasn't colonized in the same way, like direct, full political rule over the whole city. But it had incredibly significant, pervasive interaction with foreign powers.
Okay.
For centuries, under the Qing dynasty, you had the Canton system. It restricted all foreign trade to Guangzhou, confined foreign merchants to specific zones, like the 13 Factories district.
Wow, right.
So not direct rule of the city, but a powerful form of economic and social control driven by outside demand. It profoundly shaped how the city interacted with the West.
So it sounds maybe more subtle,
Oh.
or maybe insidious is the word, compared to direct rule in New York.
It was certainly different, but still hugely impactful.
How did that difference, direct rule versus this more economic or concession-based influence, how did that shape the memory of belonging differently?
That's a great question. In New York, the colonial period led to a direct change in who was in charge, a new American identity that, for many, replaced older European ties. For Governor's Island, it meant a total change in purpose and ownership. In Guangzhou, because there wasn't that complete political takeover of the whole city, the memory of belonging kept this continuous ancient Chinese thread. But it was a thread that was now constantly negotiating with powerful foreign economic and cultural pressures. And then later, you did have things like the Opium Wars and the establishment of actual foreign concessions like Shamian Island.
Ah, the place with the European architecture.
Exactly, an enclave of foreign administration, foreign lifestyle, right within the city. So while it wasn't the same as New York's experience, foreign influence in Guangzhou, whether economic pressure or actual territorial concessions, deeply impacted its development, its economy, its culture. And it created really complex, sometimes contested ideas about interaction and belonging.
So the takeaway is colonial influence doesn't always look the same.
Not at all. It can be direct rule or more indirect economic or cultural pressure. But either way, it always leaves these deep, lasting marks on memory and identity.
It's really interesting how those historical layers then get perceived by later generations. Our Guangzhou narrator, for instance, they grew up during the reform and opening up era.
Okay, so more recent time.
Yeah. And Guangzhou, being this historic gateway, naturally reopened its doors to global stuff, goods, culture. Their childhood was shaped not just by Chinese stories, but strong American and Japanese influences too.
Right.
They mentioned watching Hong Kong and Taiwanese TV before satellite got restricted, using the early internet before it got locked down.
Yeah.
It was seen as cutting edge, globally connected.
A window to the world.
Exactly. And for them, the colonial era, it felt somewhat distant by then, not really a central theme. The vibe was more about openness, embracing new things, a mix of traditional Chinese culture still there, but also this real receptiveness to foreign innovation, especially among young people.
That's a fantastic insight. It shows how the direct sting of history can fade, right? It morphs into something more nuanced, maybe a legacy.
Yeah.
For that generation in Guangzhou, the memory of colonial influence wasn't so much about oppression, maybe, but more like the historical groundwork for a new era of global exchange. It's about how the memory of these huge shifts doesn't just disappear, it actively gets recontextualized by the people living through the next chapter.
Okay, so we've hit water, origin, colonial impacts.
Yeah.
All shaping these places. Which brings us to our final theme, the one that kind of ties it all together, change.
Yes. Change.
Yeah.
The constant current, the relentless force that drives how belonging evolves over time.
But how do we see that playing out in Governor's Island and NYC?
Well, Governor's Island itself is just such a dramatic example. Think about it, from this restricted military base for centuries,
Look off.
totally closed off, to now being an open public park, a vibrant arts and cultural center. That's a massive transformation.
It
reflects huge shifts in how we think about cities, about public space, what we want from them. It's actively creating a completely new kind of belonging on that island. And New York City as a whole, it's like the epitome of constant reinvention.
Always changing.
Always. From a colonial outpost to this global megacity, defined by relentless waves of immigration, economic booms, busts, architectural styles changing constantly, the city is never static. It's always absorbing, adapting, becoming something new. So belonging in New York is kind of inherently tied to navigating that constant flux.
Yeah, you have to embrace the change almost. And Guangzhou, it has that millennia-long history, but the pace of recent change there.
Oh, it's staggering, absolutely staggering. We're talking rapid economic growth, massive urban expansion, transformation into a modern megacity. You see skyline pictures from like year to year, and they're totally different.
Incredible speed.
But what's particularly fascinating in Guangzhou, I think, is the simultaneous effort to hold on to its unique Lingnan cultural heritage amidst all that crazy modernization.
Oh, that tension.
Exactly, this compelling tension. A city desperately trying to grow and adapt at an insane rate while also consciously trying to preserve elements of this deep, unique cultural identity.
That must be hard.
It's a profound challenge for belonging. Change there is about navigating both hyper-accelerated development and cultural continuity, trying to maintain a core identity while embracing relentless progress.
Okay, so that's the key insight, maybe. The way change happens is distinct.
That's it.
Governor's Island's change feels almost planned, deliberate. New York's is this relentless, organic, maybe chaotic flux. And Guangzhou's is ancient evolution suddenly hitting warp speed, but with this added conscious effort to preserve heritage.
You nailed it. That's a great summary.
And we also hear the narrator's personal feelings about this rapid change in Guangzhou.
Right. How does it feel on the ground?
They observe that the city's historical extreme splendor, when it was China's sole trade port that's kind of returned to a more balanced state, it got this new nickname, the culinary capital.
Ah, Food City.
Yeah. But they also feel that amidst China's overall rapid urbanization in the last couple of decades, Guangzhou's aura seems to have faded further. They see it at a crossroads for its future.
A sense of being overshadowed.
Maybe. And the narrator openly cherishes memories of the exceptionally convenient and uncomplicated Guangzhou from their youth.
Ah, nostalgia. That feeling that something precious has been lost in the rush.
Is
That sentiment, cherishing the uncomplicated past, it really resonates, doesn't it? It shows how rapid change isn't just about new buildings. It's about losing familiar social textures, maybe certain conveniences, even a city's perceived place in the world.
Yeah.
So change isn't just a force, it's this profound catalyst for nostalgia, for questioning identity, for constantly reevaluating what belonging even means as the world just transforms around you. These cities, they aren't just places on a map. They're living, breathing stories constantly being rewritten, and belonging gets redefined with every single new chapter.
Living, breathing stories. I really like that. Constantly adapting, reimagining themselves. Okay, well, that brings us through the four lenses: water, origin, colonial influence, and change. It really does feel like an incredibly potent way to unpack the memories of belonging in places as different geographically, culturally, as Governor's Island and Guangzhou.
It gives you a framework, right? A structured vocabulary, maybe.
Yeah.
A way to think about these really complex urban histories and identities that goes beyond just the surface facts.
Yeah, it does.
And by seeing how these common themes, water, origin, influence, change, play out so differently in unique local contexts, we really start to grasp that belonging is never truly fixed.
It's not static.
Not at all. It's not a destination you arrive at. It's a continuous process, a flowing narrative, kind of like those rivers and oceans we started with.
Nice callback.
Yeah. It's always moving, always evolving, always being reshaped by history, by human experience, and by our own personal connection to a place.
So the final thought then, for you listening, maybe it's this. What forgotten layers, what hidden narratives of belonging might be waiting just beneath the surface in the places you know best?
Good question.
What happens if you look at your own town, your city, maybe just your neighborhood, through these same four lenses we use today: water, origin, influence, and change?
Yeah.
Think about the history, the forces that shaped it, how it's changing right now, and what belonging means there for you and for other people too. I challenge you. Apply this framework to your own surroundings.
You might be surprised.
You really might.
Yeah.
You might uncover some surprising connections about your own place in the world, and maybe even your own place within it.